Good afternoon. It is 1:30 p.m., May 21st, 2024. I will call this regular meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper to order. Welcome all of Council and administrative staff joining us in the quorum room. I welcome those who are watching on our Zoom platform and those who will be watching later on our YouTube channel. Before I begin, today, May 21st, is World Day for Cultural Diversity, for Dialogue and Development, also called Diversity Day. On this day and every day, everyone is urged to do their part to bridge the gap between cultures. And it's a great opportunity to shout out our own Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Committee and the work that they do for all of us in the community of Jasper, and relevant to particularly to an item later on our agenda today. I will advise at this stage that I have a scheduled Teams meeting, so a virtual meeting with the Minister of Tourism at 4:15 today. So if our meeting continues late, I will excuse myself at 4 p.m. to go prepare for that meeting and turn it over to Deputy Mayor Waxer. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Seeing nothing, may I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda for today's meeting as presented? Deputy Mayor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. As usual, we have 3 sets of minutes for approval, beginning with the Legislative Committee meeting minutes of May 7th. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? There are none. Perhaps Councillor Wall, as chair of that committee, would make a motion that Council approve the minutes of the May 7, 2024 Legislative Committee meeting as presented. Thank you, Councillor Hall. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. We also have the regular meeting minutes of May 7th, 2024 before us. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? And if not, I would look for a motion. Councillor Keller-Rampy, thank you. A motion that Council approve the minutes of the May 7th, 2024 regular Council meeting as presented. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That's carried. Finally, we have the meeting minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 14th, 2024. Councillor Melnick. That's your motion to approve those minutes as presented. Thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, which takes us to agenda item 4, correspondence. First on that list, 4.1, Jasper Pride Festival Society and Out Jasper. There is an attachment. We're told that others may speak to it as well. I will look first to Director Reid.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I am here on behalf of Out Jasper and the Jasper Pride Festival Society, as their members are all at our welcoming event at the Commemoration Park for new and returning staff. So they were unable to attend. However, I have been involved with the organization meetings, so I'm prepared to speak to the item. And it is a request for permission for a non-standard crosswalk. There are other details I'll get to in a second, but that's the main request. And so together, the Jasper Pride Festival Society and Out Jasper are excited to submit the request for permission to enhance the crosswalks on the 600 block of Patricia Street under policy F112. Our proposal entails painting 3 non-standard crosswalks, each adorned with symbols representing the LGBTQ2+ pride, the traditional rainbow pride flag, the transgender pride flag, and the progressive pride flag. We attached a map outlining these locations, and I will interject to say these are the same locations that were painted 2 years ago and were to be painted last year, but weather and personal circumstances made that impossible. So there's the only differentiation from previous years that you would see is that the 3 locations are now uniquely 3 different flag colorations. The traditional and transgender pride flags will feature the requisite white borders at the top and bottom, while the progressive pride flag, the one in the alley, will be painted within the white blocks of the crosswalk. We believe these vibrant additions will not only celebrate diversity, but also foster inclusivity within our community. In order to execute the project, we are requesting a partial closure, 1 lane at a time, of Patricia Street and First Street on the evenings of May 29th and 31st between 8 p.m. to 1 a.m., as well as a short closure on the afternoon of the 30th on First Street. Specifically, we plan to professionally clean and prime the walkways overnight on May 29th, followed by a brief partial closure the next afternoon for a photo shoot with TD Bank and members of our LGBTQ2+ community. Finally, on the evening of May 31st, a dedicated group of 8 to 10 volunteers will paint the 3 crosswalks, with half the street on Patricia closed for painting and sealing at a time to ensure minimal disruption of traffic flow. And I will also mention that the committee has spoken with quite a few of the business owners, and this time was chosen partly due to the influence or the advice of some of those business owners that this would be the least intrusive time for their business. So to facilitate these efforts, we kindly request support from the MOJ in the form of traffic control items such as barricades, pylons, and flagging, equipment, etc. Additionally, we would greatly appreciate the assistance with permit processing and designate the town liaison, which I have agreed to do and I have done in previous years. We've already communicated our plans and requested support from the surrounding businesses, and we'll present the signed letter of endorsement, which I did not receive before this meeting. I realize now I have not received that letter yet, and I'm prepared to speak to the meeting or at the meeting today. Further, we would like to request a request for rainbow colored flowers to adorn the large planter between Lucia's Gifts and Baxter's Gifts for the 2025 summer season. Though we acknowledge that we missed the order date for this season, we hope to secure these vibrant blooms well in advance for next year, as they are typically ordered far ahead of time. We deeply value our strong relationship with the Mayor and Council of Municipality of Jasper and express our sincere gratitude for your ongoing support in our efforts to cultivate a robust and inclusive community. With the assistance of the municipality, we eagerly anticipate signaling to both our community members and visitors alike that Jasper is a welcoming and supportive community for all. Thank you for your attention. That's signed Lynn Wanup and Michael Ormandy, the 2 representatives of the Jasper Pride Festival Society and Out Jasper, respectively. And I am prepared to answer questions other than why didn't I receive the letter yet? And I imagine it's just not done yet.
Thank you, Director Reed. Are there any questions from councillors? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. My question for administration, is this request something that can be facilitated? The barricades and the help with street closures?
I can speak to that, Your Worship, through to Councillor Hall. This is the same level of support we've given in previous years, and yes, it is within my favorite scope, budget, and authority.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hall? No. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's great that we are able to review and talk about painting these 3 areas. The type of paint being used, will there be a longevity, or will we be looking to next year the same request to be able to maintain the sidewalks?
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Melnick, great question. And the short answer is we really hope so. So as mentioned, TD is sponsoring this event and has provided enough funds to purchase a higher level of paint, as well as you'll notice mentioned in there was professional cleaning and priming. So these are things that have never happened in the past. And so the hope is that they will last longer. with this level of prep and the higher quality of product, the expectation is it will last longer. We won't know until we try it. But yes, it's intended to be different than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall and then Councillor DeMore. Councillor DeMore.
Yeah, thank you. Through your worship, to administration. A few years ago, and I'm saying a few years ago, way back when, there was an application that was approved by Parks Canada that had a kind of a 5-year expectancy to it, and we did a test strip just south on the south median heading out of town towards the intersection of the highway there. And I remember it lasting a little bit more than 5 years. And I'm not sure if we went to revisit that, but it was a specialty, and apparently it was also environmentally friendly and had a long lifespan. I don't know if there are any records of that anywhere, or where we would get information that, but I thought that with the way that our crosswalks deteriorate in the community so quickly, that maybe there's an opportunity to explore other applications down the road.
Thank you, your worship, through to Councillor Demota. If you are talking about, remember that we had the bear-shaped crosswalks? Those ones, they were actually an inlay, I think.
That's right.
But that was quite a few years ago, and they did last a lot longer, and they were quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the inlays. This was like
Oh, okay.
a surface application. It was orange yellow.
Myself and Director Grayhead are not familiar with that, so we can try to find out some info, but again, you know, I'd just like to mention that crosswalk painting, line painting is not a Jasper problem. The environmentally friendly paint used throughout the province is prone to wearing out. So we're really hopeful that priming, and actually there's also a plan to do a sealing coat, that this durability may affect the durability in a real positive fashion. So we won't know until next year. But I will mention the policy does say that crosswalks have to be applied for annually. So until we found a product that had some multi-year longevity, I think we're going to be back to this every year.
Thank you.
Just before I turn it over to Councillor Hall for the motion, and it's not relevant to my support for the request, but you're right that we are not the only community that suffers from wear and tear on crosswalks. Other communities I know have gone to sidewalks rather than crosswalks. And I wonder whether that might be a message conveyed to the applicants for future years. We'll see how the new product holds up, but it's unlikely to do much. It may extend it somewhat, but it's a hard surface with lots of traffic, and it's going to get chewed up, but not the same consideration if we were to permit painting sidewalk. So I would just invite you to have the applicants consider whether they might refine their request for another year.
Thank you, Worship. I will absolutely pass that on to the committee.
Deputy Mayor Waxer.
Just on the topic of an annual request, I just wanted to express gratitude for the fact we have volunteers in the community who are willing to put the time and effort into doing this showpiece of inclusion. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for that.
Thank you for that, Deputy Mayor Waxer. If there are no other questions or comments, I will turn it to Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I would like to make the motion as what I'm going to now refer to as Pride Alley. That sticks. That council approve the request from the Jasper Pride Festival Society and Out Jasper for non-standard crosswalks and refer the other requests to administration.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Hall, is there any debate? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That was carried. Thank you, Director Reed, and thanks to the applicants, GPFS and Jasper. That takes us to agenda item 4.2. Thank you, Director Nadal. That takes us to agenda item 4.2, RCMP quarterly report. We have the report in the agenda. Are there questions arising from the report which councillors might request be taken back to Sergeant Badesi? Deputy Mayor Waxer.
I just wanted to make the comment, it was really nice to see that the detachment commander is accessible 24/7 to community stakeholders, local governance and Parks Canada. No initiatives too small or inconsequential as it pertains to this unit objective of community relations. I think that community relations from a policing body is a really important component, and I appreciate their attention to that.
Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions arising from the report? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just great to see overall the stats show a decline in almost every category, whether you compare this year to last year or the current period to the previous period last year, showing, I think, an indication of ongoing police presence, I believe, in the community and the reaching out of the detachment members to be visible, and I think that's commendable. One thing I did notice on page 22 of our agenda, just the increase in one particular category, which is as it relates to mental health and other provincial stats. And that does give me some concern, this being, I believe, Mental Health Month, that in that under other provincial stats, they've had more twice the call or 50%, 69% higher to respond to those activities. It would be interesting to hear from the detachment commander or if Director Nadon has some additional background on that. I know I have heard Sergeant Badesi talk about the amount of time that officers are sometimes tied up when there is an issue where they're dealing with mental health issues.
Thank you for that, Councillor Melnick. I've seen whether Director Nadon did want to respond, but you don't have to.
No.
It could be information that is solely within the RCMP's purview. Councillor Keller-Granty.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Just theft under $5,000 a number of years ago. I remember Sergeant Badesi being here and telling us that we don't have a lot of meth or other drugs within the community, that if that was here, we'd see a lot more robberies, and I'm just wondering, are we seeing a creep of that in, seeing that the deaths under 5,000 are freaking up? I just think that would be interesting.
Thank you for that. CAO Given.
Your worship, I might just make one observation about the trends overall. Certainly worthwhile and instructive to look at the 2023 to 2024 change, where they show that percent change. It's a sort of the second to last column on the right. We should be a little bit cautious about interpreting too much of the percent change 2020 to 2024, because then of course we're also taking in the COVID period where there's significantly less traffic in the community. People were, at various times more constrained to their households. And so that you can imagine that for certain types of offenses, there may have been spikes due to people being constrained in their movements and being at home more often. But you can also imagine that there would be some that those would be particularly low years. If we had low visitation, you might see things like thefts being particularly low in 2020 and 2021, where they may have, they may be going back to what might be more of a norm. From an administrative perspective, obviously, we can't say with any certainty. That's just one observation I would make about the data here, is its base year starting in 2020 is not, I think, what we would call a common year for the way our community would behave. So we might need to get more interpretation before we put too much weight on any one specific thing, if we're looking at that change over that 4-year period.
Thank you, Mr. Given. I would just make one observation based on Councillor Melnick's comments about the increase, and from 23 to 24, it's doubling of something under the Mental Health Act, which is concerning. Of course, it's good to have that information, but it's perhaps challenging to see how that is criminal activity. It might be, but if it's under the Mental Health Act, it may be a response, but not necessarily response to criminal activity. It's happening in the community. It's important that we know. But I had Sergeant Daisy been here, I might have asked him what the relation mental health responses is to criminal statistics, because to me they're distinctly different. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'm very happy to see that we're mostly full with staff coming into a busy summer. And I also have concern around Mental Health Act, and I wonder if it's an opportunity to maybe dig a little bit further with Sergeant Daisy and find out what that exactly means. And it might be an opportunity for us to reach back out to the province for more supports.
Director Didon.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I've noted both questions and will reach out to Sergeant Daisy and can provide some information back.
Thank you for that. If there are no further questions, comments, or observation, I would look for a motion to receive the report as information. Deputy Mayor Waxer, thank you. Any debate on that? I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have no delegations on the agenda, and there is no one joining us today who might be a delegate of their own. So that takes us to agenda item 6, new business, and we begin with Director's Report, Protective and Legislative Services. Director Didon.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will highlight a few items in my report and happy to take any questions after. Essentially, starting with our capital projects, we have quite a bit on the go, and our biggest purchase is the aerial fire truck. So that's been secured and ordered, and Chief Conti managed to get an order in before there was an increase in rates and a change in the dollar and all that. So we snuck in and secured what we wanted. So that was very good news. And so the first portion of the payment has been done. The residential space rental project, so that's the turning a 2-bedroom into a 4-bedroom suite at the fire hall. Our construction drawings are done. The project is currently out to market. We had a site visit last week, which was pretty well attended, and the process closes on May 28th. And we are looking, depending on the outcomes of that process, for construction start in the fall, if everything goes to plan, to avoid the busy summer season, both for operations at the station, but also for cost savings if we end up with a contractor from out of town and the housing related to the project. Storage lots improvements are also progressing. Users got notifications that around mid-June, they will need to move their property off the lot. So it's a good chance for a bit of a cleanup at the same time. And every user has been asked to make an arrangement with the bylaw enforcement service. So we all are allowing people to store their vehicles or their trailers in front of their house with a permit if they are unattached. And so we're making arrangements to make sure everyone's looked after, and that should take approximately 2 weeks before people can move back in. The training room reno is almost done. We have a bit of plumbing and electrical to do, but that project is almost closed. That's one that's been on the books for some time, so we were happy to see that one progress. And we also ordered and received quite a bit of wildfire equipment. So that's all here and living in our trailers for the most part. So we have lots of new supplies, including the ability to put a wet line on the west side of town, so around Stone Mountain and going onto the bench. And year over year, we plan to expand in that area, but that's a pretty big improvement on our wildland protection for this summer. And we did 2 emergency management exercises this spring. One was focused on operations, so some door knocking, so activating that specific part of our process. We've never really gone that far into our exercises before. So special thanks to our fire chief, Matthew Conti, and our community development manager, Lisa Riddell, put a lot of work in organizing this in-house, and it was quite successful. And we also held an agency administrator session. So Councillor Melnick, as part of the Emergency Advisory Committee, as well as Mayor Ireland, attended that. And we did our annual emergency management exercise with Parks Canada the next day, which was also quite successful. We had some lofty ambitions and we met them. So that was good. From a staffing perspective, one of the highlights is that we've formally appointed our Deputy Chief, Dawn Smith, as Deputy Director of Emergency Management. So that means that Dawn would be allowed, have the right authorities to make decisions during an emergency. So in the context of emergency management, he could activate our plans and make decisions there. So just as a recap, our Fire Chief, Matthew, is the Director of Emergency Management. I am the Deputy Director, but now we've added Dawn as this sort of third layer to be sure that we have coverage. Matthew and I always are coordinated to make sure that someone's around, but we now have that extra person, so that made a lot of sense. And our incident management team has been growing. So we've been recruiting additional staff from different departments and really focusing on training. So a few more people got their ICS 300 and then proceeded with position-specific training, which allowed us to have 13 out of 17 staff who were participating in our exercise this spring to be trained in their positions. And that's really a big improvement from our previous sort of level of training. And so we're feeling quite confident that we're building the team appropriately. And of course, challenges will come, but we're better equipped to meet them. A large amount of fire inspections are taking up quite a bit of time for our captain of training and prevention. So that was a new position in 2023. And so 1 year into the position, we're seeing that we have quite a young crew on the fire department, which requires a lot of training. And that is the norm across fire service in Alberta. So that requirement for training continues to be quite high. And then hand in hand with that position, the prevention part includes all of the fire inspections. And so anytime there's a new business, commercial kitchens namely take up a lot of our time. And then all of the associated reporting requirements, it's the workload is quite big, which explains how we've hired some other individuals, contracted individuals to help us with different parts of prevention because we're finding that workload is a lot. And in terms of communications and engagement, I think you've seen me and Chief Conti and others all over the community in April and May. So we did a lot of that. We do get the sense that the community is pretty prepared. Good attendance at our events, but nothing crazy like we've seen in years where people didn't feel like they were prepared. So that's positive in our books. And from a stakeholders relationship, we're really making progress in developing some more robust protocols there as well. So it's all been going pretty good. And last but not least, I have news to announce that are not in my report. And so we've been working with Parks Canada on our emergency services agreement ever since Matthew and I started 3 years ago. It's been a pretty high profile item on our to-do list. And I'm happy to report that we've received approximately $90,000 additional in 2024 for that contract. And we are still chasing a bit more. So we're continuing the negotiation with Parks and going through our statistics and the jurisdictional areas and all that. And so we're making some progress. We've secured some additional funding, but we are continuing to develop the model to make sure that we get good compensation for the services we provide in the national park. I'm running out of steam. And I'd like to thank our colleagues at Parks Canada. So Jasmine Ramatan, she's a special advisor to the superintendent. So she's been put in charge of the file, and we've been seeing some good movement since Jasmine has been involved, as well as Alexander Monk is the Director of Finance or equivalent for Parks. And he's been a key part of developing a fiscal model that is predictable. So we signed a 1-year agreement, but we're looking forward to continuing the negotiations to eventually enter into a 3-year agreement would be the goal. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Dodon. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I have a couple questions for you, Director Nadon. The first being with fire inspections for new businesses, is there a fee to the business for those inspections?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hall. There currently isn't a fee. Our fire bylaw sets that out, and we have a revised version that we're looking to bring to council. And I think there's provisions in there if there's multiple inspections. So if we go once, we give a list of deficiencies, and if we have to go back multiple times, then ultimately we could charge. But currently we don't. And that will be a good conversation for council to have. Some communities charge, some don't. So where we would like to go with that is a topic that will come up for discussion.
And then my second question, I'm just going back to what you said in the very beginning of your presentation about trailer storage on streets in front of homes. Did I hear that correctly? And is that just personal pull behind RV kind of trailers, or like work trailers? Or boats?
Mayor Ireland through Councillor Hall, thank you for asking, and I can provide a bit more context. So this is specifically for individuals who have property in the municipal storage lots. So it doesn't apply at large to people in the community. And essentially, we need everyone to remove their trailers or boats or truck campers, not on a vehicle is the other option. So if you have property in the storage lots, we need users to remove it so we can essentially grade and level, like add material, grade level, do new parking stalls. So while we're doing that work, we're issuing permits to the users so they can, what would be usually illegally parked, but because they have a permit, because they were moved from the storage lots, it will be okay to do that as they're not allowed to put their property in the lot.
Councillor DeBona.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through Ms. Nadon, Director Nadon, sorry. I just I appreciate the info here, and you got a lot in there in a concise fashion, so it was an easy read for me. Yeah, I just want to express my gratitude and I don't know if it's a heightened level of security, but I really appreciate that all the work throughout the years that we've done, whether it's fire smarting programming and just the confidence that I feel in our emergency preparedness in the community as a whole, particularly from administration and your collaborative efforts with our agencies, our partner agencies. So it's gotten, you know, and if it ever comes here, we're just going to be better set for any type of emergency. So thank you for that. I don't want to ramble. On the note of the inspection charges, is there a potential to maybe recoup some of that time or effort through business licenses, for an example? So not every business is going to require the same type of fire inspection, but in order to get a business license, you have to get a fire inspection initially, right? Then whatever follow, maybe there's an opportunity there to recoup some of those dollars. Not every business is the same, so there could be some leveling out that way. Just a thought. And on a similar note, is there on the Parks Canada Emergency Management Agreement, has there ever been a discussion on billing per event? For an example, so that we'd have a set fee or whatever the amount might be, and then instead of having a lump sum, I'm not sure exactly how it works to this day. But you know, sometimes there's a concern on whether we're overcharging or undercharging on either side, and maybe that could be a way of alleviating some of that, I don't know, concern.
Mayor Ireland, through to Councillor Demota. That is one of the avenues that we explored during our negotiations, and the challenges with the per call basis is it's administratively more cumbersome to administer. So every time there's a call out, then there needs to be an invoice and that kind of process. But it's also very hard to budget with that kind of system. So some years we have less calls, some years we have more calls. Particularly in 2023, we just pulled the stats for that, and we're almost at double the amount of car accidents that are outside of our jurisdiction that the department went to, right? So it would be difficult to have some predictability in the model, both for parks and for us. And I think the biggest challenge that we're encountering is that the per call basis suggests that sure, the fire department will go out when we get called, but then there's a cost to being ready to get called, as in we need a fire hall, we need training, we need equipment, we need all kinds of things in order to be ready to respond. And how do we calculate that is a bit of a hard one. One of the big steps that I think we've covered in our negotiations now is we've come up with an actual financial, fiscal, like mathematical model of what it costs to run the department. Now, what percentage of that cost or what portion of that cost should parks be paying for on the basis of our respective jurisdictions, which are different in the town site, in the extended municipal boundary, and in the national park. And then the different call types, not all calls are equal. So for example, so the vehicle calls are the ones that take up by far the most staff and the most equipment, versus we get quite a large amount of false alarm calls, which is whoever's command, a fire truck and one person going to a site for half an hour is one type of call. A response an hour down the parkway with 2 rescue trucks and a crew of 8 is completely different, right? So that's the sort of level of detail that we're getting into now. We have a good fiscal model, but how does the call volume interact with that is kind of where we're at.
Just to finish up, and I don't mean to get too much into the weeds, it's just because of, you know, when you get your wheels spinning, and I was just, when you were saying that, I was thinking, well, when we get an assessment in our community, the 5-year rotation from our assessor, it's based on the past 3 years and going forward. And could that be a concept model to help us in some type of predictability in weighing out the, you know, the potential for what the next season might bring?
Yes, absolutely. So we've been working on 5-year averages. So we're slowly getting away from the 2020, 2021, were the 2 years that, not unlike the criminal stats, were kind of unusual. But also, like I said, in 2023, we saw a huge spike in motor vehicle calls. Why is that? Is it truly because there were more accidents, or is it the way we're getting dispatched? Or is it, you know, there's a few different things at play. And so to shield yourself from those variations year over year, going with a 3 to 5 year average is probably the way to go. I think there's consensus on both sides around that. And also going through a 3-year agreement would also further that financial sustainability or predictability in the model is very much what we're looking for, as well as what Parks Canada is looking for.
And that kind of reemphasizes what I usually say. If I thought about it, somebody smarter than me is already ahead of me on that. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor DeVota, Councillor Keller-Ramsey.
Thank you, Mayor, and you too, Director Dunn. The commercial lot, in the S block that we allowed winter parking, will they get permits or are they gonna stay for the summer, or are we opening that back up to commercial?
Mayor Island through. Councillor Keller-Ramsey, I'm still on. I believe maybe you missed the meeting last week. I came back with a report about that, and we've received direction from committee to, I'm paraphrasing, but continue maximizing usage and revenue until we come back with a more permanent plan, which may involve a capital project to reconfigure the stalls. So the large stalls are in really high demand, small stalls, not so much. So in the meantime, we are allowing the winter pilot project users to stay on a monthly basis because we don't really have another use for those small stalls. So in the meantime, let's offer the service, get some revenue until we come back to council with a plan, is what's happening.
Director Nadon, I wonder whether you could speak to what I see as a potential disconnect in the communication and engagement section. So I know that April is an extremely busy month for the protective services part of your portfolio, all sorts of public engagement going on in preparation for the upcoming wildfire season in particular. So open houses and all sorts of opportunities to engage the public with respect to fire smart and preparation. And you've indicated in the report that those events were generally well attended and community members appear to be prepared and aware of emergency protocols, but then the final sentence kind of claws back a bit and says that it's a continuing challenge to keep that momentum. Can you discuss that a bit and how council might be able to assist, if at all, in both generating and maintaining that sense of momentum that you're after?
Thank you for picking up on that, Mayor Ireland. It was deliberately placed. So emergency preparedness and emergency management is one area. So that's, you know, how will you get your information, have your plan, be ready to evacuate or do whatever. Fire Smart is very much about actions you can take on your own property. So how can you protect your own home or apartment or business from potential embers coming into the town site and igniting the dead leaves under your deck that you haven't cleaned up in a few years, right? So Fire Smart specifically, I wish people understood that it has the potential to save your property. And people really, the level of engagement that I wish we would see is just not there. So we've had our ex-fire chief, Greg Van Tighem, provide some information sessions, and Greg is seen in Canada as one of the Fire Smart experts. Like, we are quite lucky to have him here and such a great resource. I think we had 7 people turn up at the residence session. Was part of that we had a lot of events going on and people had to pick which one they're going to go to, and they chose to go to the emergency preparedness one and not the Fire Smart one. Like, that could be. But we see lots of properties around town that are very out of compliance with it, and compliance is not the right word, but with Fire Smart principles. And I wish we had a better tool. I guess I use the word compliance. It was a bit of a slip, but I am kind of wondering, you know, could we go that way? Could we have different measures? Because education and awareness is not cutting it, is my current view on Fire Smart. And like I said, it could literally save your property. Like, if that's from Greg, but like, if homes don't ignite, there is no disaster. There's a wildfire that goes through the community, and the community is left through our structural protection efforts, but through people's individual efforts in their yards, properties don't burn if they don't ignite. And if you remove the potential sources of ignition around your house, there's a good chance that your property will be okay. People don't seem to get the memo. So how do we escalate from here? How do we go beyond communication and awareness is something we're working on as a department and planning for future years, but we have some good resources in place. People are just not taking us up on it. We're offering free hazard assessments, so you can have a trained fire smart person from the fire department go to your home and walk you through like what are your biggest hazards, what should you be doing, and you get a report at the end of it. We're seeing some uptake on that, but not very much. And yeah, attendance at those public information sessions has been quite low, is what I meant there. So emergency preparedness, knowing what to do when an incident comes is one thing. Being proactive with fire smart and protecting your property, we're not seeing what we would like to see there.
Thank you for that very full answer. Appreciate it. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, your worship, and just a follow-up on the fire smart. I saw that Patricia Circle, I believe, are now displaying that they are a fire smart area in the community. I believe it's Commissioner Patricia Circle, which is great. And hopefully we could have more areas in the community join along with that. And thank you for all of the efforts. Especially was great to see the testing of the emergency system, both the email, the texting, the phone calls, however you choose to receive it. I did want to deviate just to another item. You mentioned paid parking launched on the 1st of May, but I wanted to probably first compliment the department, but also ask a little bit about the installation of the sidewalk patios. Things appeared to go extremely well. Patios were in place very early. There was a delegation that came to council to see if there could be a waiver from the 1st of May. But from what I saw, because of the way the patios have been evolved over the last 2 years, that this year was almost a seamless process. I'm just wondering from a protective services, from bylaws point of view, the difference between last year and this year, and if there's any additional things that we could do better next year.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Melnick. That is all Mr. Jones. I will give credit where credit is due. Neil has been spearheading that program. And the biggest difference between last year and this year is that last year, everyone applied. So they were all new permits, so site plans had to be submitted, reviewed, ran against the criteria to make sure that we were meeting our discretionary use permit parameters, et cetera, versus this year being year 2 of a 5-year permit. All those permits were already in place. So unless someone was proposing to change their installation, it was more like here's a letter saying we want to renew, here's a proof of insurance, and here's payment, off you go. And an on-site inspection was still required to be sure that the installation met what's in the permit. But the workload associated with the renewals this year was a lot less. So last year was particularly time consuming because they were all new permits. Having that said, CEO Given and I have been discussing, we have 3 or 4 patios that were approved the previous year for a 3-year permit. So technically those will come due next year. So how do we want to handle the next round of 5-year permits, and what are we going to do with those individuals or businesses that had 3-year permits, and to sort of regularize the process is something that we're thinking about. But you are correct that it was a lot more efficient, pretty seamless, and not very many changes in the installations, which was the goal, was to provide some predictability and some security and investment that businesses made towards a permanent setup. So we're seeing the benefits of that for sure.
Thank you for that, and congratulations. And I think you highlighted where I was going in that we will have changes next year in some of the ones, and it would be great if we could talk to those individuals while their installation is up and show them what the current guidelines, or go through the current guidelines and what may or may not be able to be retained in the future. And that way they can anticipate, and we can perhaps get away from the council being approached for variances, because we can tell people a year ahead of time that what you're proposing doesn't really work within the current guidelines.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. Are there any other questions for Director Nadon? Deputy Mayor Waxer.
I was just trying to look up the information, but a couple of weeks ago, we passed a new program that had that allowed homeowners to work on environmental upgrades to their home and I was thinking about fire smarting and how there is actually a cost to that, and wondering if there's any potential to expand the program to include something like to cover fire smarting, and I'm sure it's probably not within the parameters, but if there's any creative way we could explore that so that people might be able to cover those costs. Arborists and changing out of materials can be expensive, and it may be a barrier to people moving forward.
Mayor Ireland, for Councillor Waxer. So under the provincial legislation, we wouldn't be able to use the same financing tool where any financing to support those clean energy improvements wouldn't count against the municipality's debt limit. That tool wouldn't be available to us for fire smarting. And if council wished administration to identify an opportunity to provide financial support, that's something that we could do independently. And so many communities provide initiatives support initiatives where they provide financial assistance to residents or businesses to accomplish some sort of outcome that the municipality wants to encourage. Jasper has good previous examples with the studded bike tire program. The municipality was looking to encourage more residents to ride their bikes in the winter, and so there was a monetary incentive to be able to defray some of the cost. Council could choose to establish a similar sort of program for fire smarting.
Thank you for that.
Right, thank you. If there are no further questions for administration or for Director Nadon, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion to receive the report of protective and legislative services for information? Deputy Mayor Waxer. Thank you for that. If there is no debate, I see none. I'll call a question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Director Nadon. Agenda item 6.2, compliance deposit waiver request. This comes to us from a recommendation from Committee of the Whole last week. Mr. Given, did you wish to speak to it at all?
Your worship, administration may not need to. It might be fresh in everyone's memories, but I'll just maybe hit highlight under the current proposed budget for the Canada Affordable Housing Project. The Parks Canada required compliance deposit is just under $1 million, $967,000 calculated based on the estimated cost of construction. This compliance deposit is really money that Parks Canada holds to ensure that a developer or builder completes all the required steps or actions. That money is then returned to the project proponent at the end of the development process with interest. So it does mean, of course, that whoever's doing the project has to secure that amount of money in order for it to be held by Parks Canada during the period of time when the project is under construction. Obviously, $1 million is a fairly significant amount of money, particularly in the context of trying to develop affordable housing. Many communities have established processes, municipal policies, where they will provide fee waivers or compliance deposit waivers in order to support defined affordable housing projects. And the intent, I think, from committee here is that council formally request that Parks Canada do the same, both for this project, the Canada Affordable Housing Project, and to consider other opportunities that Parks might have to support other future affordable housing projects.
Thank you, Mr. Given. Again, this recommendation was discussed at length a week ago. If there are other questions for administration, this is the opportunity. Otherwise, I would look for a motion from a councillor based on the recommendation coming from committee of the whole. Councillor Wilson,
Yeah, I would make that motion that council requests Parks Canada waive or modify its compliance deposit requirement for the not affordable housing project to support the development of affordable housing within the municipality of Jasper, and that council requests Parks Canada review the potential to establish an ongoing program to waive or modify other fees and levies to support affordable housing projects in general.
thank you for the motion. Councillor Wilson, is there any debate? Anybody wish to speak to the motion? If not, I will call a question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you for bringing that forward, Mr. Gibbon, and thanks to the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation for that request. Agenda item 6.3, paid parking exemption for Indigenous peoples, again, coming to council as a recommendation from committee of the whole a week ago. Not sure if there's a need to ask administration to speak further to the item. Director Reed, I think you spoke to the matter a week ago. Are there any questions councillors may have for Director Reed? If not, I would look for a motion. Deputy Mayor Waxer,
That council direct administration to waive paid parking fees for individuals and families who display a Parks Canada issued Indigenous Park Pass in their vehicle.
thank you for that motion. Any debate, or does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Takes us to agenda item 6.4, reallocation of funds from road repair to purchase of a 1.5 ton smooth drum roller and trailer. Again, discussed a week ago at committee of the whole. This comes forward as a motion from, or pardon me, a recommendation from committee to council. Are there any further questions for administration arising from council? And if not, I would again look for a motion. Councillor Hall,
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I'll make the motion that council authorize the reallocation of $22,000 from the road repair capital budget to purchase a used 1.5 ton smooth drum roller and trailer. And I really appreciate going after funding used equipment. Thank you.
and if there's no debate and no councillor wishes to speak to the motion, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Yeah. Thank you for your initiative, Director Greathead. Agenda item 6.5, National Public Works Week Proclamation. Again, came forward a week ago. It's before council now by way of recommendation from the committee of the whole. Director Greathead, I think you missed an opportunity to address this last week, but you're welcome to address it now if you wish. And if you feel I'm putting you on your spot, on the spot, just decline.
Just give me 1 second, your worship. Good afternoon, your worship and council. So just on this item, it's National Public Works Week, May 19th to the 25th. And this is an initiative that's been brought on by the American Public Works Association and the Canadian Public Works Association. And they have for years promoted the National Public Works Week as a tool to inform the public of the importance and value provided by town, cities, and various levels of government of the services provided by the public works staff. So public works is a large service area provided by local governments, which includes many separate critical functions that a community needs to thrive. Here in Jasper, the public works services are handled within the operations and utilities department. We're responsible for ensuring that we provide safe, clean drinking water, the operation of our Class 4 wastewater treatment plant, environmental reporting and regulatory compliance, road and sidewalk repairs, winter road maintenance, solid waste and recycling services, grounds, parks and sports field maintenance, facility maintenance and asset management, fleet maintenance, capital project management, emergency management and staffing and support, encroachment and utility service requests, environmental stewardship, and as well as too many other services to mention. An important part also this time I'd like to make is that even though we have a base population of under 5,000 residents, our volumes of wastewater, solid waste and recycling suggest that we're hosting more than 30,000 people a day on top of our population during the tourist season. So that adds to the complexity of our operations. Indeed, we have our wastewater treatment plant. We only have half the system running for 7 months of the year. So we fired up at the end of May the second bioreactor, and we go through that and we shut it down by October every year. So it's just that kind of critical demand that's on our system and on our community. And that's all I have to add to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Greathead. If there are no questions, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship. I will make the motion that council proclaim the week of May 19th to 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Holland?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I just want to express appreciation for this department, and a town of 5,000 that sees 30,000 a day. I can imagine that we're probably staffed for a town of 5,000, and I'm sure in your travels you've seen towns that are bigger with more staff, and I appreciate everything that the Ops Department does for the community of Jasper.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I too want to speak to the motion just to take this opportunity. Director Greathead, thank you and your staff. And although this is National Public Works Week, and in most places infrastructure is for the benefit of the residents and is vital to them. In our particular circumstances, as we know, we spend about a third of our budget on visitor-facing services and infrastructure, and that is provided primarily by your team, and they do an excellent job. And in a tourism-based community, the community itself is integral to the product that is offered by the destination. This is far beyond just serving residents. You're serving the economic life force of our community, which is tourism. And again, as Councillor Hall just indicated, your staff for a resident population of about 5,000, and we are serving all those extra visitors and doing it in exemplary fashion. So I take this opportunity to thank you and your crew for all the work that you do, not just for residents, which is of course vitally important, but also to support our tourism economy. Deputy Mayor Lancer.
Just a brief comment that I think we live in such a privileged world that we all expect that every time we turn on the tap, the water comes on and flush the toilets, things go away, and that our sidewalks are safe and without tripping hazards. And so sometimes that this very important work doesn't get celebrated or acknowledged because it's just the way it is. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to say, express appreciation and to remind us all to be grateful for the fact that we don't worry about those things, and it's because of your team that that's the case.
There are no further councillors wishing to speak. I will call the question. All those in favor? Is unanimous, and I do so proclaim. And once I see the proclamation itself, I don't think I have it, but I will get it signed today. Thank you, Director Greathead. That takes us to agenda item 6.6, the 2024 Tax Rate Bylaw. We've now been an hour in. This is has potential to be a protracted discussion. I could call a break now if people feel the need, otherwise. I'm at the will of council, but I will carry on. Do I see nods for a quick break? All right, it is 2:35. Let's just take 5 minutes and be back at 2:40. So I'll call recess for 5 minutes. I will call us back to session at 2:41 p.m. and we are about to commence agenda item 6.6, the 2024 tax rate bylaw. Mr. Gibbon?
Your worship, just before council starts, I do want to bring something to council's attention. All of you would have received a corrected version of one of the tables. So this is a pretty significant item that we're going to bring to your attention. Page 29 of the PDF package. So page 29 should be the first page of an item called bylaw 261 taxation rates bylaw 2024 draft A. Remembering that we have sort of two different versions for council's consideration today. Administration after publication caught an error. Thanks to Mayor Ireland for catching it. I'm sure other council members also saw it, but he was the first to bring it to our attention. So unfortunately, we have what is a material error in the package that went out. The first table under the whereas, which identifies the 2024 municipal requisition, is incorrect. You would see that those numbers were duplicated in the second version of the bylaw, version B. So administration has updated that and circulated, I think, to council members at the table here. We can show that on screen for the public, and certainly will correct the agenda package and the minutes. But the essence of the alternatives continues to be the same. There is a shifting of about $230,000 from the municipal requisition from the non-residential class to the residential class. And administration wanted to bring that error to council's attention. And we can show on screen, if you would like, the corrected version just to contrast the differences. And maybe I would do that now. And again, your worship, my apologies. I think this is a bit of that challenge of both a couple-day turnaround time. And this is one of those things that with a fresh set of eyes and upon reflection, you can catch these kind of errors. We also noticed a couple of holdovers of 2023 where it should say 2024. But I will show you the differences. In my package, I've added the two. So this is you can see on screen, highlighted in red, the table that was incorrect. This is the incorrect table that is in your package. And you will see the 2024 municipal requisition numbers and the total numbers. Those have been corrected in the document that you were circulated today. And you can see that, I'll just focus in on the one, you can see that shifting. So in the uncorrected version, it suggests that the residential sector would contribute a total of just over $3 million. In the corrected version, the residential sector would contribute just over $2.7 million. So that's the difference. Again, our apologies for adding that confusion. The material presented in the admin report continues to be the same. It identifies that shifting of just about $237,000 between classes. And that is the essence of the discussion and consideration of the two alternative tax rate bylaws that are there. And my apologies for not catching that before it went to print for council.
Thank you, CAO Gibbon, for that. With that introduction, I turn it to councillors, either for further debate. We discussed this again at some length a week ago at Committee of the Whole. It is before us now as a recommendation from committee to maintain the current tax rate ratio for 2024. In any event, whether we maintain it or change it, to give first and second reading to the 2024 tax rate bylaw. Further discussion or questions for administration regarding what comes to us as alternatives for the tax rate in the bylaw, the tax rate ratio in the bylaw. Councillor Demona?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to let my fellow councillors be aware that I did try to reach out to several people in the community, particularly in regards to some of the agencies that we're partners with in town. And I didn't really get a response back. Either maybe feeling that everyone's really busy right now, or maybe wanting to pay more attention to have some input for the next go around. But I did try. I tried to make people aware that we were contemplating this and having these discussions. So I did, however, have some engagement with residents in the community as well, and some through my inquiry, and some for people just stopping me in the street. And I do want to say thank you for those people out there that watch us on YouTube later, or watch us live. So I'm grateful that there's some participation, and I was made aware that people are paying attention in the community. And yeah, I was quite grateful to get that feedback. So it depends on who you talk to on where people sit with the concept of the ratio itself. And having said that, I'm pretty comfortable with where we are at for the recommendation today. Thank you.
Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. My question for administration is, did we receive any public feedback via email or our regular channels?
Your worship, for Councillor Hall, no, not to my knowledge.
Mr. Given, I wonder whether I might have you confirm, you mentioned that you'd also picked up some incorrect references to 2023. Could we just confirm in the lead-in paragraph, the description being a bylaw of the municipality of Jasper, that should say 2024 taxation year. In the second clause of the preamble, it should be 2024. In the preamble that is just in advance of the last little graph on page 29, that too, I think, should say 2024. And those are the dates that I picked up.
Your worship, that's
The
correct.
same ones.
So each of those, if council moves on to doing first and second reading today, would suggest first and second reading as amended, and the amendment being those dates.
Thank you for that. And in the absence of other hands up, I noticed something for the first time. I'm embarrassed that in all the years I've been doing this, I don't think I've picked it up from the previous year. But at the bottom, say of page 30, where the bylaw, the citation, there's a repeal of last year's bylaw. Is the repeal actually necessary? So if somebody were to be in arrears of their 2023 taxes, would we actually want to repeal that bylaw or leave it intact? It only applies to 2023. It's not as if it's in conflict with the 2024. So just something that occurred to me as I was reading things actually last night.
Your worship, there may be a couple of different ways to handle this. I think our historic practice has been to have a new tax rate bylaw each year. You can imagine from a practical perspective, that would mean that our website would just have a whole bunch of tax rate bylaws that actually would sort of clutter up the bylaws section. In other municipalities, I know that they have a tax rate bylaw. And that tax rate bylaw gets changed each year. So in Jasper, we're having new ones, repealing the old ones so that they can be taken off of the website. But the practical effect, as you said, is ultimately the taxes have been levied. There is a bill that is owed. And so that becomes what any unpaid taxes are based on is the bill that's been sent out. So I think it's really more of an administrative housekeeping. We could transition to doing a little bit of a different practice where we just have a tax rate bylaw and then we update it each year. But I think the practical effect is about the same.
Thank you. Councillor DeMont.
Except doing that CAO fashion. Thank you for that. I was just thinking through your worship, if we did have a set tax rate bylaw and just update it every year, would it have to go through first and second reading and then get third reading for Parks Canada, or could we expedite it by just changing it internally for every year and then not having to get that? It could save us a couple steps maybe.
Your worship, for Councillor DeMota, that's something I think we'd have to consult on. That's a bit of a unique process in the municipality of Jasper, and in the other municipality, any bylaw would require 3 readings. We'd have to take that away. I think the intent is to ensure that residents have enough time to see the tax rates that are being proposed. And so in this case, I think we would likely default to having a gap between the introduction of the bylaw and the final reading, whatever that would be. I think best practice would be to ensure that those don't all happen at the same meeting, so residents and businesses still have an opportunity to see the proposed rates prior to them being sort of finalized by council.
Thank you for that. If there are no further questions, is there a councillor prepared to make a motion? Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to highlight here, we have actually 2 opportunities with the 4.5 to 1 option being presented as well. And my observation would be that because of the changes in the value of the commercial property over the last assessment period, going up 15%, according to accurate assessment, and the residential went up approximately 7%. Unless we change that proportion to the business at this point, that more and more will be picked up by the business community because of their increased value. In other words, we're putting more of a burden on the business community, and this is due to the fact that last year could have been a very good year, and also probably 2020 dropped off as part of the 3-year rotation in the value that commercial properties are based on. And that will continue to happen next year. We're going to have this same scenario where commercial properties may continue to increase in value faster than residential, and we'll have this further spread of who's picking up what portion of the taxes. I would argue in favor of us taking a look at draft B, and as opposed to reading first and second readings of draft A, in an effort to try to start a more equal or try to reflect less of a burden on businesses and have more of our residents pick up our municipal taxes. And I throw that out to councillors to consider, but I would be in favor of looking at draft B, or the second option, for this year's municipal tax bylaw.
Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I believe I asked this question last week, but with the application of the over levy, we ended up at about an 8.5% tax increase. Is that correct, CAO given? I know Director Malinchak answered my question, but I think it was about 8.5.
Your worship, Director Malinchak is under the weather today, but she is online. I'd like to refer that to her. My recollection is the same as Councillor Hall's, that it was about an 8.5%, but Director Malinchak, can you speak to the property tax percentage increase after the application of the over levy?
Yes, your worship, through to Councillor Hall, we did discuss that, and you were correct that it was close to that 8.5% change because of the over levy.
Go ahead, Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I think that raising taxes is never easy. The way that municipal taxes are structured, and because taxes don't grow as the economy grows, every year we have to adjust. And so that, leaves the burden with our taxes. I think it's also important that we as a council today reckon with some of the decisions that were made on past councils to kind of keep our taxes artificially low by, I don't think our tax growth has kept up with our tourism growth, inflation, which I don't believe the municipalities immune to. Like, our bills are higher. We signed our new collective agreement in the last few weeks. We want to pay a living wage. That's important to us. And also the state of our infrastructure, maybe not putting as much as we needed to in the past into reserves. You add that to the reduction from the province in payment of lieu of taxes, downloading a lot of the services that they're supposed to provide. We heard earlier today in the RCMP report that there's potential rise in mental health in the state instances. I do really believe it's important that we get that recognition from the province. We have a unique set of challenges here, living in a national park that sees 2 million, 2.5 million people come every year, and we're supporting it with our small base. I'm not sure if I would be in favor of looking at option B at this point. I'm curious and looking forward to seeing that. I think it was a business tax policy that was a motion that was made last week as well. I'm more in favor of keeping it as it is and moving, and maybe potentially moving forward in 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Anyone else wish to just enter discussion, or we could have debate if somebody is to make a motion? Councillor DeBonne?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a motion yet. Just because this is, even after a week and looking at it, it's still quite difficult, because I understand the right thing to do, and sometimes that's not the most palatable one overall. I get where Councillor Malik is coming from, but I think, judging from one of the asks earlier on this year from the chamber about, getting together and having some meetings, I would really like to solidify a little bit more on that relationship and just trying to open discussions. We've got a tax notice going out. We had an opportunity since December to really debate this, and it's been out there. I think that going forward, even considering what Councillor Malik just said and stated, I think we have an opportunity to really have some cumbersome details and really work with our agency partners and helping understand the process a little bit more, and maybe advocate for some information coming from the business community instead of getting anecdotal comments from individuals saying that we can't afford this anymore, and this is a little tough to contemplate from year after year. And I hear it from individuals, but there's no collective voice that's really coming forward to us right now in a constructive way. And I'm not trying to pinpoint the chamber. We have a hotel association in our community, and we don't get a lot of feedback. We did a few years ago, but I mean, you know, we're moving forward out of COVID, and I think there's some important discussions to be made here and to have. And until we get like some type of organized request or an opportunity to really bring this forward, we've been in the public forum and we're talking about this, and we're not getting a lot of feedback right now. And, you know, in being responsible to the community, I think staying status quo for the moment is probably a good thing to do. But I think the better thing to do is to engage with other stakeholders in the community to come up with, you know, a better idea of what's actually going on out there and the temperature and how people are being affected, because every business, every commercial building and every property is different. So I would like to get a better understanding of where everyone's at, and then what direction those individuals and those representatives think that we should be looking at when we come to making these broader decisions. So I know that we're elected to make these decisions, but at the same time, I think the temperature out there, from my perspective, can be a little hot depending on what side you're discussing with. So I'm okay with where we are at today.
Thank you, Councillor DeVoe. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Just want to follow up on one of the comments that Councillor DeVoe made. A couple of years ago, we went from 5.1 to 5, and at that time, you know, we got a lot of feedback from our business community, the Hotel Association, the Chamber, and Tourism Jasper. And at that time, some members here on council that were on at the time, not our current council, said that, you know, moving forward, we would look at this more closely year by year. So we're going to do that. You know, if we're going to keep it status quo, we can't leave it to the last minute every year. We promised, I know I did, and I can't talk for others on council at that time, that we would do a complete look at the 5-to-1, where our taxes was going. So I think if we're going to do this, I think we have to say to our business community, we will look at this for 2025. We will have a workshop. We're going to put it on the motion action list, and we're going to get it done. Because we can't say every year, oh, tax bills have to go out. We're here, it's the 9th hour again, and we'll be here again next year. So we want really, if we're really serious that we want to work with our businesses and we want to work our taxation properly, then let's get a workshop together.
Councillor DeVoe.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Councillor Melton.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do want to recognize the work that was done to put together draft B and all of the mill rate information that is there for both businesses and residents, that when they do get their taxation notice on whichever option we vote on, they could go back to their assessment and then use these mill rates to recalculate if we would have gone with draft B, for example. We may go with draft A, but they can go back to their actual assessment and see what change that would be for their business. I think this was a very productive exercise in moving us along, and it would show each of the commercial properties and each of the residential properties, based on their actual assessment, what their potential taxes could have been or could be this year, depending on where we vote. And then they'll have an informed, a bit more information to be able to say, yeah, I got assessed $9.3 million. And if I apply these mill rates, my tax bill should have been this. And I think then they'll be able to compare what is actual and what potentially could have been. So again, thank you to administration for doing this work, because it gives the whole community now an opportunity to make a true comparison of where potentially we could be going.
Thank you, Councillor Melton. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and I also couldn't agree more with Councillor Kelleher MP. My question for administration, the growth rate of commercial versus residential property owners here, higher commercial, is that sort of across the province? I'm wondering if other municipalities of, in particular, our neighbor to the south, if they've seen, I would imagine during COVID things slumped, and I would imagine things are coming back, and I just wonder if you've heard or know, so what's also happening out there.
Your worship, for Councillor Hall, so I don't know the specifics of each other municipality, but I would say that the approach of property valuation in Jasper is the same all across, is applied the same way all across the province. So any hotel-based company would see a similar increase in value, maybe to a greater or lesser extent, depending on how big the community, how much the community was impacted by COVID. And the reduction in traffic, obviously, for Jasper and Banff probably was an extreme example, recognizing that our borders were closed, and that's the vast majority of visitors are international. A community that has sort of a hotel that serves a regional or Canadian market might not have been impacted quite the same way. That said, I know that the city of Calgary over the last number of years has dealt with a tax shift in maybe a slightly different direction. There's a lot of conversation a few years ago about the downtown office towers being vacant, high vacancy rates. Those high vacancy rates meant that the return on those properties, the economic value of those properties was lower, and it ended up shifting the tax burden to the residential sector, which the city of Calgary had to deal with. So a little bit of a different example, but the rules on how you assess and value properties are the same all across the province. And so to a greater or lesser extent, other communities would be dealing with the same thing.
Well, as I wait for a motion, I will just comment that I continue to favor draft A, which is the new sheet we have before us, which is a continuation of the current tax rate split. And I do that for a number of reasons. One of them associated with comments from Councillor Demota last week about rushing things. And it is a complex issue. I would rather that a change be principle based. One of my concerns is that the 4.5, although it gives a basis for comparison, it is an absolutely arbitrary number. Administration said, okay, we'll give you another number that's different than 5 to 1, but we don't have principles to support why it should be 4.5 and not 5 or 4.6 or 4.7 or anything else. But it does offer comparison. And I made some comparisons at a global level, and so we had the $223,000 number a week ago. So using that, if that was to be applied to residential component, so roughly 3 million, that would be an additional 7.7% increase for our residential property owners. Of course, that wouldn't fall equally, but globally, it would be 7.7% added on top of the 8.5% effective rate is. It would represent about a 2.7% reduction for non-residential properties. That 223,000 dispersed over 8.3 million. So a small decrease, not split equally among non-residential, much higher increase. And for a change of that magnitude, I favor more discussion and certainly more engagement with residents. And I credit Councillor Demota for his efforts over the last week to try and engage, and unfortunately didn't get a lot of that. But I think before I would be inclined to shift the tax rate significantly, I would want to engage quite heavily with both the residential and the non-residential tax base. It's a significant issue, and we've changed only twice, I think, in maybe 3 times in all the years that I've been here. 3 times at this point. Down to 6.1, down to 5.1, down to 5. So 3 times in 20 some years. It doesn't happen often. So I think we should do the work to get it right. Councillor Demota.
Yeah, it's good. And the comment you just made, I think we should do the work to get it right. I think progressively, we did the work to get it right for that time. And, you know, and times change and reflective of that, the current ratio metrics probably indicate that we are in the right spot that we should be. But, you know, again, it depends on who you talk to. So I appreciate those numbers in that context. I think it's important that that everybody understands that. Thanks.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you. I'm not making a motion quite yet. I just have another comment about our unique needs in Jasper and a need for recognition or more help from the province. And I wonder if we could get together with our partner agencies, Chamber, Tourism Jasper, Hotel Association. And I wonder if they've truly understood this dilemma we're in, this challenge, that the challenge we have living here, if they might help us lobby the province as well.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think everyone's had a chance to make comments if they chose to regarding the tax rate bylaw. So to move things along, I would make the recommendation that council maintain the current tax rate ratio for the 2024 year. And that'd be the first of the recommendations I believe we would be voting on.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Melnick. Is there any debate on the motion? Councillor Demota.
Well, I wanted to just voice that I appreciate Councillor Melnick shifting there and wanting to build a motion through consensus and got the temperature of the table. So I appreciate you putting that motion forward. Thank you.
I see no other hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you, Councillor Melnick. I got the hint to the suggestion that you might be prepared to make another motion or two.
An old English saying, in for a penny, in for a pound. My second motion would be that council give first reading to bylaw 261. I would suggest as amended with the date corrections, the 2024 tax rate bylaw.
And for certainty, that is the one that contains the page that was handed out. Thank you for that. Is there any debate on that motion? That is for first reading of bylaw number 261, draft A as amended. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried.
Thank you, Your Worship. And with that, I would make the motion that council give second reading to bylaw 261 as amended and with the revised chart that was presented at today's meeting of the 2024 tax rate bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Councillor Keller-Hrampe.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. May I make a motion that council moves that we direct administration to put on the motion action this workshop for the tax ratio for 2025, that we have a workshop, invite residents and businesses and do our research early for next year.
Thank you for that. Is there something there now based on the vote from last week?
Your Worship, last week at committee, council already gave administration direction to develop a draft property tax property tax and business tax policy for council consideration. So administration is already going to be doing that work during the discussion last week. And actually in the report, there's a fair bit of discussion about the fact that this type of issue would require substantial public discussion. The draft policy would be the type of item that would come first to council, and then council could provide some direction to administration on the methods that you'd like to see. But I think first we would draft that policy, bring it to committee, and then when committee is ready to take that out for public engagement, we would take that next step. So that would come over the next couple of months.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Councillor Keller-Renfrey. We should then be clear to go to agenda item 6.7, ATCO streetlight conversion to LED lighting. Again, 2 recommendations to council arising from committee of the whole last week. Councillor, sorry, Mr. Gibbon, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship. So there is one of the motions that is a bit sort of subject to some additional information. So at the committee last week, council asked administration to identify an appropriate source of funding to proceed with the conversion of decorative streetlights along with the LED conversion. So perhaps before you proceed with the motion to tell us to go forward and do one or both parts, we just want to report back to you. If council wishes to proceed with the upgrading of the decorative streetlight heads at the same time as the overall LED conversion, the only appropriate source for the 2024 year would be the financial stabilization reserve. I think I suggested that might be the case. The approved 2024 budget shows a expected year-end balance of that reserve of $1,075,469. So that reserve does have an appropriate amount of money under the 2024 budget that we would be able to manage that. Administration then could repay back that reserve over time. But it is on review the best and most appropriate source of funding for the project if council wish to go ahead with it this year.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gibbon. Look for a motion. If there is a councillor so prepared. Councillor Hall, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I can make the motion, and I wonder, I look around the table, do I need to split this into 2 motions, or can I read it as one big motion?
If anybody wants division, they can ask.
Okay.
Councillor Melton?
I'd be happy if it was B1, but I would definitely want to have the reference of the community stabilization or the municipal stabilization fund as a source of funding in the motion and strike the appropriate source of funding from. And then that way it's clear for everyone as to how this will be funded.
Thank you for that, Councillor Melnick. So I would make the motion that council approve the conversion of our current lighting infrastructure to LED technology, and that council direct administration to use the financial stabilization fund to proceed with the conversion of decorative streetlights along with the LED conversion.
Just before I call the question, I regret doing this, but if we're going to make the second part of that motion, we will make the determination about the decorative style. We have 4 options, and there might be more. There were 4 that were presented by ATCO a couple of weeks or a month ago. But whose call will it be? What decorative fixture we get?
Your Worship, so in the report last week, administration presented a price that was for the mid-range unit. So our expectation would be that in the absence of any other direction or objection from council, that would be appropriate. ATCO did identify, I think, about 4 different units. The highest was over $2,000 a head. The one that was in the report was about $1,500 a head unit. And it had a style that was most consistent with, I think, generally the overall urban design of the town site. So not too modern, not too old timey, because there were some, the more expensive ones were quite old timey, and I don't think really fitting the character of the municipality. So that middle of the range one was, I think from an administrative perspective, seemed relatively appropriate. If that's something that council wished us to bring back, certainly something we could do, but would impact the cost. But we could certainly finalize that with council prior to proceeding with the project.
Thank you. Councillor Melman.
Thank you, Your Worship, for bringing that up. And I just wanted to reconfirm, I believe from the presentation, if I recall correctly, the styles of lighting that ATCO presented were styles of lighting that will be available to us for the foreseeable future. In other words, they selected a type of fixture that we would be able to use that they felt confident they would have access to over time. So we're not going through this again in the near future.
Your Worship, that's correct. Your Worship, that's correct. All of those items were ones that ATCO identified as standard stock items now that they have in their repository. So we would not face that same difficulty that we have with the ones that were unique to Jasper.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Waxman.
I wonder whether the motion should also have at the ending with the savings from the LED to replenish the fund in future years, just so that our intention is clear.
Councillor Hall, you're content with that?
Yes.
And our administrative person is struggling to understand the motion now. That's fair. So the motion with the friendly amendment would be that council direct administration to use the financial stabilization fund as a source of funding to proceed with the conversion of decorative streetlights along with LED conversion, with the savings from the LED conversion to be used to replenish the financial stabilization fund. Any further questions or debate? I will call the question. It's the two-part recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? There is one opposed. Oh, you were just.
I was late.
Okay.
I was slow. I am slow.
There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 7, notices of motion, of which we have none. I'm sorry, Councillor Demota.
Just wanted to ask administration a question through you, if I may. I'm just wondering, would it be too rushed, CEO, given to get some information on the new funding that's come, that $78.5 million for childcare that was announced on Thursday from the federal government through the province to the province, and how that would affect our programs here?
Your Worship, for Councillor Mota, certainly never too early to ask, but based on the experience of the $10 a day childcare announcement from the federal government and the amount of time that it took the province to establish sort of a program and what that would look like, I'd say my expectations of having a great level of clarity are pretty low, but certainly we can follow up with that and see what we can find out.
I appreciate getting the news and the link that you sent us, and it just made me curious to how effective that will actually be and what that could mean to us. and, you know, for our program here in the community. Thank you.
That takes us to agenda item 8, councillors' reports. Do councillors have reports? Councillor Wilson.
I just want to report, took the opportunity to attend an information webinar on some bylaw changes happening or proposed in Banff. They struggle with quite similar housing needs as we do. They're approximately 700 to 1,000 units short of housing units currently. I think that, you know, our number is probably a little less than that, but representative in the size of our town being smaller. Just wanted to update that they are proposing 3 main changes to their land use bylaw that I think would definitely work alleviating some of our challenges here. And I think we should keep the conversation going with Parks Canada at our next intergovernmental meeting or sooner to see if we can move forward on items such as, well, the 3 that they are moving forward with or proposing are removing requirements for parking. So parking requirements reduced, so no minimum parking. It's then up to the developer or the builder, or the homeowner to decide what they feel their development will need for housing, and especially with development of transit and other alternative modes of transportation. They see that we should not be housing cars, they should be housing people. And so that actually hinges or that facilitates the next bylaw that they're or land use bylaw that they're trying to change, and that would be to increase building size both in height and in site coverage. And by removing parking minimums, you could then accommodate for larger buildings, which should in turn allow for more housing for people. And then the third one is simplification of zoning. So they're proposing 3 zoning densities. This one, you know, may differ in our community as we don't have as many neighborhoods, but they're proposing pretty straightforward lower density area, medium density, and high density. And very interesting proposal in that respect. You know, for example, low density area, things that would be permitted would be single detached housing, which they suggest would be even just discretionary. So there would be more support behind duplex, triplex, and fourplexes, as well as accessory dwelling units. And then an example of medium density areas, it would be almost restricted to have more than a duplex. So medium density would be triplex, fourplex, multiplex, and apartment housing would be a discretionary use, as well as accessory dwelling units would be permitted there as well. And then high density, it's all the low density types of housing are discretionary, so they'd probably be trying to restrict those. And then all the higher density ones, it kind of is a bit of a scale, and that would be so high density would be multiplex, apartment housing, and accessory dwelling units. So I think a lot of good work happening down there, and it's something we should really keep an eye on, and use their hard work to benefit us here in Jasper. So anyway, I think it's necessary to keep that conversation moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I actually have a question for Councillor Wilson. Was that recorded and will it be streamed? And I'm wondering if you'd be able to share that with the rest of council when it might come online.
Yeah, I took screenshots of every slide, although the discussion is, they have some really great planners down there. And so the discussion is very beneficial as well. So the slides and I think the whole presentation will be on Banff Viewpoints, I think is what they suggested. So their website, and then you kind of follow the cues to get to Viewpoints. And that's only one of the public engagement items they're doing, but I think it's next week. Sure what day, it's going to council.
Thank you again. Other reports from councillors? Deputy Mayor Waxer?
Yes, I attended along with Councillor Hall and Councillor Demoda, the Indigenous cultural competency training, and it was a very well planned and impactful morning, and congratulations to those who did the planning, and extreme gratitude to the Parks Canada and to Mark Young for the opportunity to attend.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Waxer. Other reports? I will report briefly because I haven't had a chance to do so. I did deliver a State of the Municipality address to the Chamber of Commerce on May 8th. On the 15th of May, I met with mayors and CAOs of the tourism-based communities in preparation for a meeting in another 45 minutes, or we have, with Minister of Tourism, Minister Scow. And I will report that I will be away from the community later this week for another week, so I will miss next Tuesday's Committee of the Whole, and I will also be away for the Community Futures Spring Business Walk on May 29th. If there are no further reports, upcoming events, there is a list of 4 events. Are there any other events to bring to council's attention? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think we have 2 more events that we should know. Starting on June 3rd till the 7th is Seniors Week, and should be duly noted. I'm sure there'll be activities that'll be coming up regarding that. And a number of councillors will be away in early June in Calgary for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference, and that'll be between June 6th to 9th.
Thank you for that.
And
Councillor Keller-Rampy, go ahead.
on June 1 for seniors and the generator, we're going to have a barbecue by donation in the parking lot of Alpine Summit. So if you can get the word out there, it will go from 12 to 3 on Saturday, June 1. And the funds will of course go to the generator.
Thank you for that. And it occurs to me that later this week, although it may be an administrative matter, but I think the school is planting a number of trees that have been replaced. So they lost some fruit trees. Mr. Gibbon, do you know anything about that? I think they were looking for attendance from the municipality. I will be away from the community, but others might be available if we had a date. I think Mr. Grayhead has been.
Your Worship, I think that's correct. I know that the municipality was approached by the parent council, and I think Mr. Great has been able to arrange some of the operations staff to be able to help with sort of digging holes. I think there may have been a request for some comments on behalf of council or some attendance. We can certainly look that up and identify and circulate that to the deputy mayor.
Thank you, that is appreciated. If there is nothing else, then no further reports. Agenda item 10, we have a motion to adjourn. Councillor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? We are adjourned.